Hello, you lovely people, and welcome to episode 2 of the Fit with Frank podcast. And trust me, this is huge. I have got the awesome Katie Bulmer Cook all the way from Sunderland to talk everything you need to know about pregnancy, exercise, how it can help you through that, through labour and early days in childbirth. She's a professional on the subject. She's a mother of Heidi, who's 8 years old, and by the time this comes out, probably a mother of 2 also. She's due on Christmas Day. As we talk through Skype, you'll know she's pregnant. She'll tell us about it. She'll tell us all her experiences so far. Really intriguing. If you're pregnant, looking to get pregnant, or just want to help someone else who's pregnant, you have to listen to this. So strap in, take notes, and leave your comments to let me know what you learn and what you want to learn again in future. Hope it helps.
I didn't realise how happy it made us feel and how good it made us feel about myself, because there are things about your body that will change in pregnancy and you can do nothing about it other than embrace it. But I think when you're exercising, it makes it easier to cope with those changes. So, of course, you're only going to get bigger. You are going to gain weight because you have to carry some extra weight to help you grow a baby. But when you're exercising, you just feel so much better about yourself. Whereas this time, I feel like I've spent a lot of time stood in the mirror, pulling myself to pieces, going, oh, your thighs are a bit of this and your arms are a bit of that. And I don't think I would have done that had I been able to exercise and just had that better feeling about myself, more positivity.
Yeah. So it's big. See, I want to come on to how someone who is pregnant could use exercise to help them through it. I know it's been a bit different for you this time, but if all going well during a pregnancy and there's an option to exercise, what kind of things do you recommend in terms of exercise for people to try to do to help?
I think that really the key with exercise in pregnancy is it should just be about keeping active and listening to your body. So when you're not pregnant, we're always trying to strive for more, lift a little bit heavier in our workouts, train a little bit harder, get our heart rate a little bit higher. And we would always say to ourselves, if you're having a bit of a day where you're really tired and you can't be bothered, we would always say, right, you've just got to push through that and you've just got to do it and crack on. Pregnancy is a little bit different in that you've really got to listen to your body. There will be some days, especially towards the end of the second and through into the third trimester, where you've just got to really listen to your body on the days where it says, I'm tired, I've had enough, I need to just put my feet up and watch some trashy telly.
Always time for that. Always time for that.
Always. But in terms of the type of exercise that you would do, anything like walking, swimming, you can still do resistance training. The main thing is that it should never feel like you're massively trying to get yourself out of your comfort zone. It's almost like you just keep trying to keep yourself ticking along. So one of the main things that you want to avoid when you're doing resistance training is breath holding and a straining action. So you should, whatever type of workout you do, you should always be thinking about, can I breathe quite comfortably here? Yes, my heart rate's elevated. Yes, my breathing rate's increased. But am I struggling for breath? Am I straining to get that last push-up out? And if that's the case, then it's time to pull back a little bit and just work probably within your comfort zone, where you're just ticking yourself along nicely. Any sort of cardiovascular exercise is great. And it's always important to make sure that you adapt your training through your 3 trimesters. So as a general rule, trimester 1 up to 12 weeks, you can generally continue to doing what you were doing previously, if that feels okay for you. It's when you get into trimester 2, and I like to split that into 2 halves, first and second half of trimester 2, and then again into trimester 3, where you have those big changes in centre of gravity, in joint stability, in obviously you'll then have a bump to consider as well, so that'll restrict range of movement. You'll have greater blood volume. You'll find you get out of breath a lot quicker. There's not as much space for your lungs. So it's all of those things to consider as you move through the second and third trimester.
And you're saying stuff like weight training is still good to do or beneficial to do,
Yeah, absolutely. As long as it's tailored to meet the needs of that specific trimester. So I'll give you an example. If you had previously been doing a squat with 10 kilograms in each hand and you'd been doing 3 sets of 15, in trimester 1, it's probably fine to keep going with, as long as you've had clearance from your healthcare provider and you feel okay to do it. Trimester 2, you might find that you need to reduce the weight, or maybe you reduce the reps, or you increase the rest between sets. As you move through trimester 2 and your bump gets bigger and your centre of gravity changes, then again you might be okay with the same weight as long as you're not straining and breath holding, but you probably find you need to do a wider squat. So what had been a normal basic stance squat before would probably now become more like a sumo squat.
Literally to make space for this extra human.
Yeah, so not only space for your bump, but also just to make you feel more stable. It's amazing how you change the centre of gravity like comes about. So then in moving into trimester 3, you might think, right, well, I can continue with the sumo squat, but I'm perhaps just going to take my weight down to like half of what I was doing, or it might become more of a body weight squat. But you can keep a lot of the same exercises, but just adapt them as you go through your pregnancy.
Right, well, that's good. Yeah, I was hoping you'd say that, and I had recommended that. I didn't know if the science changes as we develop, but I think it's common sense, isn't it, to sort of stay within your means and not push yourself stupidly, I would say. In terms of core training, I'm going to ask this question because I hear it a lot. Do you do anything in terms of core exercise through this pregnancy? The classic sense?
Not in a classic sense. So I would be avoiding your planks and your crunches pretty much from day dot, because as we know, a plank will always elevate your blood pressure a little bit because it's an isometric exercise. A crunch is just, I can't think of anything worse to do during your pregnancy. You've got to remember that as your bump gets bigger, like rectus abdominis, like your 6-pack muscles, they lengthen and then they separate to allow your bump to come through the middle. So they are in a really long and weakened position. So training them in that manner just doesn't make sense. It's not a good idea, because inevitably another muscle group will take over and you'll do yourself more harm than good. So in a traditional sense of training the core, I would avoid it like the plague. However, as we know the core as a big unit of lots of different muscles, like lower back, transverse abdominis, like deep abdominal muscles, pelvic floor, absolutely yes, because that's going to make it so much easier to get things back together afterwards. So that doesn't mean that you actually need to do like an exercise as such. A lot of the core training that you would do during your pregnancy will be quite internalized. So pelvic floor, when you're training your pelvic floor, you can do that without anybody actually knowing you're doing it.
If I'm sitting on my chair now, what have I got to do, Katie? How do I get my inner core going while I'm sitting there?
I'm going to tell you, and I think you're never going to want to speak to us again after the expressions I'm going to use, but I hear a lot of people and a lot of coaches describe how to engage your pelvic floor and your core, especially while you're pregnant. And it sounds lovely, but often it's very jargon-tastic and people don't really know what it means. So the way I describe it is, you take a breath in through your nose, and then as you breathe out, you imagine you stopping yourself passing wind. So you pull up at the back, then you stop yourself passing water. So you pull up at the front, and then you draw your belly button in towards your back. And then you breathe in and you relax all three. So if you think your pelvic floor muscles sit underneath your body like a sling, You're going to breathe in, breathe out, pull up at the back, pull up at the front, draw the belly button in, and then breathe in and let it go. So if you always remind yourself in this order, wind, water, belly button, you can't go far wrong with that.
Wind, water, belly button. I like that.
Yeah.
Probably handy at a wedding as well when you're trying to stay polite.
It makes sense. Everybody knows how to hold a pump in, and everybody knows how to stop themselves going for a wee. So if you can do those two things, you're like 2/3 of the way there.
So much better than some of the jargon I've heard. I'm assuming that you could do that all the way through pregnancy, can't you?
I think a lot of people in trimester 3 feel like they've got a bit of a heaviness on the pelvic floor, and that's because actually you have everything that's going on the inside, like you've got a baby, a placenta, fluid, that is all bearing down on the pelvic floor. So you might feel it's a little bit heavier, but you can do it all the way through, and I encourage people to do it as often as they can, for as long as they can.
Far more effective than crunches, planks. That's the hammer home message on that, because I do get asked a lot on it, because it seems obvious to us. Like we can see what happens to the six-pack muscles that you said. When you look at the anatomy and what happens, you just think there's no benefit at all throughout pregnancy of doing that, because you're not going to keep your six-pack. Whatever way you look at it, it's gone. You'll have to wait till after. The other side of pregnancy, giving birth. Do you in your mind have a plan, like I'm going to go back to the gym that day, or I'm going to do this or that, or do you listen to your body again, the other side, and can maybe you help other ladies as they do the same?
Yeah, definitely. So a little bit of both for me. I always say listen to your body, and of course it depends what sort of delivery you've had. What I would encourage everybody to do, no matter what kind of delivery you've had, is to start that wind, water, belly button thing straight away. Let's get your pelvic floor talking to your transverse abdominis and your diaphragm again, and let's get that unit switched on, especially if you've had like a section, or if you've had a tough time. It can take a little bit longer for those muscles to start talking to each other again. So the sooner you can do that, the better. And then if you've had a vaginal delivery, sorry, I've just said the word vaginal on your podcast.
We're in now. We're in. Anything goes now, I think.
Then you can start thinking about going back to exercise after 6 to 8 weeks. For a C-section, it's normally about 12 weeks, but you'll have a postnatal check with either your midwife or your doctor. Once you've been signed off, then you can go back to what I guess people would call mainstream exercise. However, that should be approached with a little bit of caution. So just because the doctor goes, yeah, you're fine, you can go back to exercise, doesn't mean you should be thinking you're going to go to like a hardcore HIIT class, or you're going to go back to a boxing based class or running. Like, take your time. Your body has been through something incredible. Like, it's the most amazing thing your body can do, but it's called labor for a reason. It's really difficult, and your body has spent 9 months adapting up to that point. So just because your healthcare professional says, yep, off you go, you can go back to the gym, doesn't mean that you should try and pick up where you left off pre-pregnancy. Take your time. So step number 1 is focus on wind, water, belly button again, and then ease yourself back in. Do a little bit at a time, 10-15 minutes a day. Body weight exercise to get you started. Get walking, get swimming if you can, and then just gradually build up your fitness. And please, whatever anybody does, don't think that getting back into planks and crunches is going to get you a flat tummy again, because it'll do you more harm than good.
It's so common, isn't it? It's probably like the natural urge, I can imagine, from listening to what people say, to do that, because that's the bit that you sort of feel isn't the same as it was pre-pregnancy, and you go straight down the gym into core. What are the risks associated with doing against what you just told me? So going straight into a core class.
Well, you're going to train your abdominals to stay in a lengthened, separated position. So just because the bumps disappeared doesn't mean that rectus abdominis have come back together. You'll say this sometimes on people who lose their baby weight really quick, and they're like, really slim everywhere else, like arms and legs, bum, lovely, but then they've still got like a rounded pot belly. Often that can be because they haven't worked on their abdominals from the inside out. It's those deep core muscles that need to be worked on.
Wind, water, belly
With
button.
things like, yeah, wind, water, belly button. Pilates is great, especially if you can get in to do Pilates with somebody who is a postnatal specialist. Perfect option. And I'm not saying that you'll never get back to crunches and planks. You will, but it's got to be a process. A bit like building a house. You've got to dig the foundations first, and then the building blocks, and you will get back at that. But ultimately the problem will be that you're training your tummy muscles to remain in that lengthened, separated state.
Got it. And just a ballpark figure, I know it will change for everybody. In your mind, Katie, if all goes swimmingly next year for you, because you're an athlete, fit athlete, how long can you realistically expect to take to get back to your sort of full fitness, as it were?
Well, I'm thinking months. If I go off how I did with Heidi, 10 weeks, and I was back in my old jeans, and you could say the old abs were like starting to come back. And really that just comes from like any phase of training, just consistency, good diet, good sensible exercise, and you can't go far wrong.
Good on you. So 10 weeks is obviously an exceptionally quick one. But you said Heidi was quite nice to you, wasn't she, during birth and pregnancy? So it'd be anything, from what you're saying, 10 weeks to 6 months, even a year for some people. Just be easy on yourselves. That's the message I like to get home to people listening, because we put, I think, too much pressure on ourselves to get back to the glory days, as it were, pre-pregnancy. Accept what's happened has happened. You've done an amazing thing. You've created a human. Give yourself a bit of space and take your time to get back into it. That's the message, isn't it, there, I think?
Yeah, and also I would say don't listen to other people too much, because there'll always be somebody who tells you that you're doing too much, or you've gone back too soon, or you haven't done enough, or you should be sitting at home eating a cake. Like, there'll always be somebody with an opinion on your body.
I've noticed that and learnt that since my daughters were born, actually. When you're in there, all these classes we go to, the gymnastics, the toddler senses, all that game, the rhyme times, there's so many opinions flying about. I can see how so easily you're confused. Stick to people like yourself, Kay, professionals that are looking at you individually, and you're listening to yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit like, I always use the analogy of, it's like if you wanted to put a new boiler in your house, you wouldn't try and do that yourself or listen to your mate up the road who didn't know anything about boilers. You would get a professional's advice and you would listen to what they had to say. And it's the same with your body. You shouldn't be thinking, oh, I listen to Mrs. Blogs from up the road because she's had a baby before. You should actually be listening to somebody who is a professional in that area. Take their advice, listen to your own body, and do what feels right for you.
Ignore Mrs. Blogs. Let her get on with life.
Good old Mrs. Blogs.
Nice lady, I'm sure. Nice lady. So I think pregnancy-wise, I've wrapped up everything I wanted to know. Giving birth, ultimately, you've got to find professional advice and listen to yourself. I think that is my very simple way of summarising. But there were some quick-fire questions I've got to throw at you, KBC, if you're ready for them.
Oh, yes, please. I like a quick fire question.
Are there any exercises to avoid during pregnancy?
Yes, crunches and planks and traditional core exercises.
Can I lift weights?
Yes, but make sure you're not holding your breath. Try and lift them up from a bench rather than the floor, especially as you get into the second and third trimester. But just make sure you are not trying to push yourself. This is not the time to get your personal best on a deadlift.
Are there any exercises that can actually prepare me physically for labour?
Yes. Well, any form of exercise that improves your cardiovascular system will give you more of an engine to keep going if you have a long labour. And the more energy you've got, the longer you can go, the less likely you probably are to need intervention. And then the other one is wind, water, belly button, all the way.
How soon can I start exercising gently after giving birth?
For walking, as soon as you feel like you're ready, just don't rush yourself. If you're unsure, always speak to your healthcare provider. But if you feel okay to have a little wander around the block with your pram, go for it.
We're turning a different direction now. What did you learn from being on The Apprentice?
Oh, goodness me. I learned a lot about myself because I think you might understand this. You know, when you work like sort of by yourself, you don't have anybody as your yardstick to compare yourself to. So you don't always know what your strengths are. So I didn't realise that I was a really good team player, not out for myself at all. And I learnt that you don't always have to have been to university and done a business degree to be good at business.
The best bit for me in The Apprentice is the start when you got the Wallies that just talk utter nonsense and they're gone within a couple of weeks. Is there anyone you learnt from there? As in they were like so bad, you were like, do not be like that person. Don't have to name names.
Yeah, I think you should just never big yourself up too much, because there were so many people that overpromised and then underdelivered.
Please tell me,
So
you know, the first scenes, you know, when you do that first saying that you're talking about, they must tell you to big that up. They can't be serious, can they, some of these people? There must be an element of big it up for the telly.
Well, if my experience of that sort of like little interview process where they've got you talking to camera is anything to go by, nobody was telling me to ham it up. They were just asking us questions like a normal person, like, why do you think you should win? Why would you be a great business partner for Lord Sugar? What makes you good? So if my experience is anything to go by, they were just normal questions that you should answer as a normal human. Some people just aren't normal humans.
Yeah, they've just got massive trumpets that they can't wait to blow themselves. One more Apprentice question. This is my favourite question. Is that boardroom lady, the one that says, Sir Alan will see you now, that lady, is she real?
Yeah.
And how would someone go about getting that job? Any tips?
I don't think she's real.
Oh,
We never got to speak to her. But I don't know, she might work for Lord Sugar and then come in and do that. I don't know. But what I do know is you sit for ages in that reception room. And when I say ages, I mean up to an hour sometimes. And it's very hot. And there were a couple of times that lady fell asleep at her desk.
So there is a lady there, but her job I thought was fantastic. There's only one series a year. She's only there once a week for that boardroom part. What is her job?
No idea. And she's been looking at the same spreadsheet for the last 10 years.
Still got your face on it, Katie. I heard rumours from this series. They said you're still on there. They haven't forgotten you. Last question. Can you teach me, because we have a bit of banter about this, to speak Sunderland slang? Is there anything I need to pick up that can get me down with the Sunderland crew when I come up and visit one day?
Okay, well, there is actually a wonderful book that you can get called the Macam Dictionary. Here's the one that you might use because you would wear these for fitness. Cowies. And this is how you would use it. An outer garment worn on the body between the waist and the ankles. It's a pair of joggers.
Cowies? Why is that?
Yeah.
As in cow, as in moo?
Yeah, that's how it's pronounced.
Hey, do you like me cowies, man? Do you like me cowies?
Here's another good one for you. This is actually one of my personal favourites. A raji. Do you know what a raji is?
It's something I eat in the curry house, isn't it?
No, it is in fact a person in a permanent state of anger.
So if I'm a Raji in my cowies, I'm angry with some nice tracksuit trousers on.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. You would say like, hey man, chill out man, you raji.
Chill out, man, you Raji. That was terrible, wasn't it? How bad was that?
We'll keep working on it because I think you've got a bit of a Scottish twang going on.
I'll admit my Scottish, Australian, Geordie accents are very similar.
I love it. I love that you tried.
So I'll say thank you, Katie, for spending time with me through here. You're my first Skyper, as I told you at the beginning. So I'm honoured to have you here. Thank you. And podcast listeners, I'll put the links for Katie Bulmer Cook in and around the notes wherever you're watching or listening. But it's Katie Bulmer Cook, isn't it? Or one word on most platforms.
Yeah, Cook with an E, because apparently that's the posh way to spell it.
Of course, the only way if you ask me. So thanks, my dear. We will see you again soon, podcasters.